know. Pick some winners and then we say, let's go. So come on.
Happy Monday to everyone. Welcome into a Monday edition of Betting Weekly Hardball. I'm Doug Kezirian alongside professional handicapper Wes Reynolds as we get going on this new work week. Of course, we are a relatively new show here under the Bet Rivers Network. Betting Weekly Hardball, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, where both Wes and I are in the lovely city of Las Vegas. But we're going to be discussing plenty of hardball elsewhere. Wes, good to be with you after this holiday weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So baseball in full swing before we get to the All-Star break next week.
And there's always different things to handicap, and there's getaway days, and then there's getaway days like this coming Sunday, which is, going into the break. We'll have guys, maybe some late adds to roster spots, things like that. It might affect some pitching, how managers do their pitching so that guys can become available. So these are all things we'll discuss throughout the week, as is usually the case on a Monday. Not a full card, but we have some interesting streaks on the line we'll get into momentarily, but I want to remind everyone to please subscribe and like the podcast. Obviously, that is the currency in today's world of YouTube. So we would really appreciate everyone supporting us because we are a free podcast, but that really helps us with the analytics. So appreciate everyone's effort on that front. Wes, you've been on a nice little run, 7-3 in baseball. I'm 15-5. How about that in my last 7 appearances here on Betting Weekly Hardball? Had a nice 4-1 show on Friday, so that was nice. So it's nice when they cooperate. That's what I like to say. When players cooperate with the handicap, it works well. So we're going to turn the page. We have, like I said, we have some really interesting streaks, and I'll get to those in a second. But marquee game of the day, I like to incorporate national television as part of the equation. So I think Tigers hosting the Rays, which is on FS1. Rays obviously back in the race in the American League East with the Yankees sort of stumbling, and Detroit, one of the most improbable wins you'll see, yesterday in the ninth, score a tying run without registering a hit in the ninth inning. They get a wild pitch with 2 outs to tie it at 1-1 and then win convincingly and cover the run line, and the game goes over in extras. Guardians are pathetic right now, but we're talking Tigers as they host the Rays. Montero on the bump, who was just called up from AAA Toledo against Baz for Tampa. How are you seeing this game?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Montero is good. He served in the opener role a few times this season, even though last 3 big league starts, he went 5-5 and then 5 2/3. So he has been kind of like a utility pitcher where he's been used as an opener and then as kind of a stopgap. It looks like that's what we have here. Tigers, by the way, swept Cleveland, as you mentioned, over the weekend. Tampa Bay, been on a tear, did lose 2 of 3 to the Twins, couple in extras up there in Minneapolis. So Shane Baz, Cater Montero have not bet this game. Lean a little bit to the over 8.5 because the Rays have been smacking right-handed pitching. And that's really, I think, been a good part of their run where they're now, 8 games over 500 at 49 and 41. So would lean a little bit to the over here. Not sure how long Montero is going to go, so that's a little bit of a question mark. Are they going to have him do his full start? Because originally it was going to be slated. They had an undecided, so they didn't name a pitcher, but it was going to be, I think, Flaherty's turn in the rotation. Jack Flaherty's really been struggling to get through and get deep in the ball game. Strikeout stuff is still there, but he's also been pretty darn hittable. So it is Montero tonight. So lean over 8.5 for me, but I have not bet this as of yet.
That's how I would lean as well. So the Indians or Guardians, excuse me, the tip jar, the swear jar.
Either way, they've been bad.
Yeah, 1-0 winners on Saturday, and then on Sunday they were about to lose 1-0, and then the bats woke up in the 10th. So I don't know if that's a catapult to more runs. I will say the Rays, my lone loss on Friday's show was they were up 3-1 or 2, whatever it was, late, and blew the lead to the Twins. The bullpen blew a couple leads all weekend. Even Saturday, they were 5-1, and I had them again on Saturday, and they blow that lead. So it's been a frustrating experience lately with Tampa. Fortunately, I did lay off yesterday, but of course they won. I would play the over here, if anything. I agree that I think Tampa's lineup can get to Detroit. I don't know. Baz could shut. I just worry about this Tigers offense a little bit. Just what I saw with the Guardians. Now the Guardians starting pitching's okay, the guys they had going, that scored. So I'm not are out of their run, but the over is the only way I could play. I guess my other consideration for this game was going to be Ray's team total. It's 4.5 though. That's the only concern. So it's a big number. They're favored. The Rays are probably the right side. I just don't trust their bullpen after this weekend. So, like you said, I would go to the total. I just don't know if it'd be a team total or a game total.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go here. A little bit of an X factor with Montero, of course, going and are they going to stretch him and let him make his normal start, or are they going to kind of baby him and make this a little bit of a bullpen outing? I don't know. So yeah, cautious lean to the over here because I'm just trying to look ahead on the schedule here and see who is slated to go in terms of that. I think it's Dietrich Enns who is going to go tomorrow. And then so tonight could be the bullpen game for the Detroit Tigers where Montero goes 3 and then they maybe go with Gibson Long and do it that way because the Tigers have done that every few starts. They kind of do that where they piecemeal a bullpen, 3 innings here, 2 innings here, 2 innings with the next guy. So could be happening tonight.
And what was I going to say? I'm completely blanking on something. Oh, the Rays, just their offense. We've talked about their lineup just being so solid, like no big, huge names, but they've been just there's really no easy outs. So that's something that I would look to the team total. And to your point about Montero, there's no pitching props right now for him. So you can't go over, under strikeouts, over, under outs. So it's the right thing to do. But just wanted to clarify that for anyone wondering at Bet Rivers. I mentioned Tampa making a move in the standings. They're now 3 back of Toronto. The Yankees swept and then didn't really produce against the Mets. So the Yankees and the Rays both 3 games back of a first-place Toronto squad that has won 8 straight games. So we liked them a little bit the last month or so. I know you've been on Gossman a couple times here on the show. So here's Toronto finally hitting. They jokingly said it's the summer of George, with Springer raking of late. And they're big favorites here on the road, but you're going to hold your nose and look to the underdog. What's up with that?
Yeah, I think maybe I go opposite George here. And by the way, Toronto, after that, if you would have thought maybe Toronto is kind of like, okay, they just swept the Yankees. Now they're getting all the love. The next series was where they were going to struggle. Well, no, they swept the Angels, but all 3 of them were one-run games, and 2 of them were extra inning wins. So
and Angels left a million guys on base.
They did. The Angels really, I thought, played a lot better than getting swept in Toronto. Probably should have at least won 1 and maybe even 2 of those games. But Blue Jays finding ways, and sometimes when you're on a run, you do that. Now they're going to Chicago, and this spot has been, not a lot of deviation here, but teams that have gone home to away on a travel day, 16-21, and then the reverse 21-16 for the home teams that go from away to home, which the White Sox clearly do after they took 2 or 3 from Colorado. I know it's Colorado, but it is a series win, and they've actually won 2 of their last 3 series, the White Sox. So you get Sean Burke up. He's had 3 straight quality starts, went 6 in LA, only gave up 1 earned, 6 hits, struck out 5, went 5 against the Diamondbacks, struck out 7, went 5 1/3 against St. Louis, struck out 7. So Sean Burke has been relatively solid. Now, you've got to be, almost dead solid perfect, it seems like, for the White Sox with that lineup, how they can run, and they're only 30-60 this year. But a little bit of a tricky, tough spot for the Blue Jays here. And I thought 150, which is around where it is, I think it's 148 to be exact right now at Bet Rivers. Anything around that I thought was actually a solid take on the White Sox. Barrios last time out only goes 4 1/3, got hit around against the Yankees, got enough run support, obviously, for them to win that game on July 2nd. But he's been a little bit erratic on the road in some of these starts. I know he went 7 in Boston last time out, but only went 4 2/3 against the Phillies. So he's been a little bit up and down, I think, so far this season. You look at the record, like it's okay, 4-3 in 18 starts, but he's got a little bit of regression coming. And I could see it actually coming here. White Sox, by the way, a couple of weeks ago did take 2 or 3 from the Blue Jays up there in the 6. So yeah, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna take a shot here. Every once in a while, I'll do that with a decent price underdog, and I'm gonna do it with the White Sox tonight.
Okay, good to know that. Look, it's all about the price tag, right? I mean, we had a bunch of aces going yesterday with Skeens, Scooble, Wheeler, and really, Skeens lost and Scooble should have lost. So it's all price based. And so to grab some plus 145, like you said, it just moved to 148 at Bet Rivers app. I can't fault you at all. The Blue Jays flat spot, the ultimately delayed flat spot, you think, after the Angels series that really should have happened once or twice in that homestand. So now they're on the road on the south side of Chicago. Shane Smith not delivering. So, and then Hauser did in Colorado. So maybe his being back is good for the Sox. And then now maybe Burke is a nice arm they have to go with that pitiful lineup. So maybe Barrios gets touched up by the White Sox. So you're on that play plus 148. I support it. I don't get involved, but I am supporting it. Guardians at the Astros. We mentioned Detroit sweep, and then Cleveland has now lost 10 straight. So while Toronto has everything going right with winners of 8 straight, they take over first place. Cleveland was hanging around first place, I swear, a month ago. Now they're a punching bag, and they're just pathetic. And so, again, they were up 1-0 in the 9th. They give up a walk, steal, advance to third, and then score on a 2-out wild pitch. And then in the 10th, they give up, 6 runs? And the game goes over 7.5. One of the worst beats I've ever seen in baseball. Just criminal 7-2 final when you were 1 pitch away from a 1-0 game. But them to break sometimes in the gambling world. So the Guardians now hit the road. Bybee going for Cleveland. Again, they've had decent pitching here and there. They just can't hit. Now, Houston is going to have Gordon. I thought one publication that Hunter Brown starting, that he's going to go tomorrow. So instead, it's Colton Gordon, which is a very different situation than Hunter Brown. But Gordon's had some nice stretches. He did face Cleveland about a month ago. 5 innings, 1 earned, allowing 7 hits. So here's Houston, a $1.43 favorite. And there's no way I would jump on Cleveland. Just want no part, demoralizing loss. But I also not rushing to bet 143 with Gordon here.
Part of this is the pitching change with Colton Gordon going. Gordon's got some strikeout stuff, but he doesn't really go deep into games. I think he's only been past 5 innings twice this season, or at least twice since very early May. So you're taking some risks with him. I think I had a prop on him last week. He did not go over the 5 innings in Colorado. So maybe that's a little bit of a concern, but market is coming in a little bit on Cleveland, surprisingly enough, because Houston, they just swept the Dodgers for the first time in many years and really took it to them, especially that one game where it was 18-1 on Saturday. Yeah. So, so the market is coming in on Cleveland, surprisingly enough. I'm usually one to like to take spots here, Doug, but I think I'm going to stay out of this one because I understand the market movement on Cleveland. And Bybee, I think, has been despite his record, has been a relatively consistent starter, but not going to get involved here.
Did I interest you in an under 7.5?
That would be the way I would go.
It's 118 is the juice. It's a little much for an Astros lineup that could just stay hot, like you said, after a great performance in LA at Chavez Ravine. I'm a little uneasy, but the Guardians don't hit a lick. And I think this pitcher, Gordon, can stymie him. I wonder if they're pretty demoralized right now, 10 straight losses.
They very well could be. And now the Astros, all of a sudden, it was like, hey, early in the season, what's wrong with this team? Now you look and they're 20 games over 500. So it's not a team I want to get in front of, but I do I trust the market here who's coming in on Cleveland? Not necessarily, but this is, I think kind of the peak laying right now on the Astros. And this is obviously potentially the abyss on Cleveland. Maybe it's not. I'm not going to pay to find out.
Yeah, not the best opponent to be catching when you coming off a demoralizing loss and you've lost 10 straight. Now you're like, now you got to go travel and play Houston, who's kind of on fire. But like you said, it could be a flat spot. They got the White Sox looming next. So maybe that's a little relief potentially for Cleveland if they don't get get back in the W column before then. So I might come back to this one. I might come back to maybe a team total under 3.5 for Cleveland, or just the under 7.5 in the game, because I do like Bybee, as you alluded to. Now to the aforementioned Dodgers, who have surprisingly riding a little bit of a skid, having just been swept at home by Houston. They're in Milwaukee, so a nice matchup here. Just teams that are doing well this year. Peralta is going to be on the bump for Brewers, who I think is always a mixed bag. And Yamamoto goes for LA, and he's been kind of a mixed bag after starting the season lights out. He's been somebody I just don't know what I'm going to get. And it's crazy to think that a Dodgers staff that was loaded, right? They almost had too many starters. And then they've just had Blake Snell injury, just numerous injuries. So I think the Dodgers will get back on track, but I don't need to pay to find out. And frankly, Dodgers are good against righties, so that's something that at least comforts me, when betting on a situation like that. But Peralta, he can have good stuff. He's sort of unpredictable, so I'm not getting involved. But it would be Dodgers or pass.
Yeah, same here with me. I was just kind of perusing through the props right now and really seeing if I see anything. Maybe lean under 17.5 outs with Peralta, but you got to pay a decent tag, I think, for that. And a game that is getting bet to the under, because we see some 7.5s from the overnight openers of 8, and some 8s with some heavy juice out there. So is getting bet to the under. So market does, I think, expect a little bit of a pitcher's duel here. And maybe, there is the thought, I guess, that, okay, you get swept at home. The best thing to do is to get away from home and go on the road. And, usually you're the most focused, certainly for that first game. So would lean Dodgers on the side, but not going to go with it here.
Yeah, no need to force it if you're not feeling it, but it's something that caught my eye. I agree that the Dodgers getting away could be good. I thought Brewers getting Woodruff back and everything. Like, I think it's a nice spot. Milwaukee's kind of feeling themselves a little bit, and Marlins were playing really good ball. So to get a win yesterday and all that, close out the series is strong. Another team that's been playing really well of late, depends on the standards because they just beat up on Washington, and now they got the Rockies in town. But the Boston Red Sox bats are finally waking up a little bit. They've won 5 of 6. They get the lowly Rockies in town. Fitz goes for Boston. Gomber going for the Rockies. And frankly, this 230 line feels cheap, but the Boston bullpen kind of stinks too. So that's a concern of mine.
Yeah, over's been hit here a little bit. It was 9.5 in the overnight, pretty much 10, just about everywhere, including at Bet Rivers 10 under -113. That's pretty much the market average. So, Richard Fitz is a guy I've played against in some props this year because he doesn't really go deep into games. And, I remember the one against the Angels a few weeks ago where they let him go through the first inning. I think he gave up 7 runs or something. But this isn't a pitcher I want to fade necessarily in this matchup against the Rockies. So you see the strikeouts at 4.5 would lean certainly to the over there if I were to get involved. And would lean over. This might be a spot where he can go over on his props, because I think the Red Sox got to feel pretty confident without the ball they've been playing since the Devers trade, and getting the lowly Colorado Rockies here. No idea what to do with Austin Gomber. When I run my numbers every morning, and courtesy of our friends at Fangraphs, and I kind of look at what these guys are doing, and I look at Gomber just not going deep into games. He averages, I believe, 2.75 strikeouts per 9 innings. That tells you that he's getting rocked around a little bit, and certainly, doesn't get a lot of run support with Colorado very often. So not a team I like to back here necessarily. So would lean if I play it. This is a bit of a heavy price tag on the money line. So I think maybe the way to attack that, if you don't want to lay that, is go with Richard Fitz over on his strikeouts 4.5, outs are 15.5.
One line's -107. I actually had the run line yesterday with Boston. Now they were on the road, so it's a little bit better. And they had Garrett Crochet going, and Crochet was not sharp. He had the bases loaded in the second. I don't know if the rain delay played a role. It helps when the Red Sox get a 4 spot in the top of the first when you're laying the run line. And it got there. It was a little hairy. They cut it to 2 in the 9th, but that was a different game, obviously. But that's an option. It's -107 at Bet River, so something to keep in mind, that it is an option. You just don't have the stud pitcher on the bump like you did yesterday with Crochet, but the Obviously, the price is much more manageable in that regard. Sneaky, really good game in Anaheim. Angels hosting the Rangers. Kikuchi goes for LA, which we talked about was just in Toronto. Fly cross country. Now they got DeGrom and the Rangers in town. And, we ask everyone to join the conversation here on the comment section on YouTube. We got Maserati Fox saying Jacob DeGrom day. Good day, gentlemen, talking to us. I like under, but these Angels bats are, they're intimidating. They can get shut out and they can be feeble, but then they can also rake. So 7.5 with the Grom, though. I do kind of like the Rangers here. I know Kikuchi's been nice, so I lean Rangers, but I think I like the under here, 7.5.
Yeah, and I wonder the Angels, the psyche a little bit with these guys, because they deserved a lot better fate. Like we were talking about a little bit earlier in the program, they deserved a lot better fate than they certainly got up there in Toronto, losing all 3 games by 1 run, losing 2 of them in extra innings. And by the way, kind of a tricky situation too. At least it has been on these travel days, where the team that goes away to away, and that's the Rangers in this spot, against the away to home, where the Angels are now back at the Big A after being in Toronto over the weekend. The away team has been 33-24 in those spots. Now, that's not like a trend or anything to go to war with. That's just something like for context this year in terms of the spots. But yeah, Angels' first game back home after that road trip that ended in such a disappointment. Tough for me to back them in this spot. But DeGrom, you're getting him priced at the top of the market because he's been so good and he's gotten a lot of wins, which we know the win can be a little bit deceiving, but he's 9-2 in 17 starts. Maybe has been a little bit lucky. When you look at that batting average, balls in play, only a 233. The league average, by the way, is usually in the mid 290s. So 233 is on the very low side for that batting average, balls in play. 213 ERA, 328 on the xFIP, which is not bad. Anything kind of close to even 3 is pretty good on the xFIP, but maybe a little regression coming to DeGrom. Some small market support for the Angels, certainly from the overnight. So lean Angels. I don't like the spot that they're in, though, that first game off that road trip. So I'm going to leave this one out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. The spot going against DeGrom, I think this could be a really empty sort of possession for the Halos in this game. So I was playing around with some props and things like that. Could I interest you in a same game parlay that does DeGrom over 6.5 Ks? So he's going to have to pitch sharp, but with a lineup that's feast or famine, I think that could be famine for them tonight against DeGrom. So over 6.5 strikeouts, and then an alternate under of 9. So going alt under 9 and you get plus money plus 112.
And the Halos are one of the highest teams in the league in terms of strikeouts from a batting standpoint. So I wouldn't be mad at that necessarily on that single gamer.
I'm trying to think if I've ever done a, same game parlay with alt lines. I mean, you can go to this. Well, this makes too much sense. So if you go to 9.5, it's plus 104. And I think that's a worthwhile. It's an 8 cent on a half run. So I think that's worth it for sure, especially around a key number of 9. So I'm going to make that my first play. I'm going to go DeGrom over 6.5 strikeouts. And then an alternate under. And for people who don't know, just go to the all under the Bet Rivers tab. And then you just go under most popular, like which total runs. You can just do the sliding thing and you move it to where you can get to under 9.5 and you get plus 104. So I hit a couple. I actually hit a same game parlay with DeGrom last week. It was total outs recorded. But I'm gonna go K's here, and then the under 9.5, and it's gonna be plus 104.
The outs can usually be dangerous too with Jacob DeGrom. That is one thing to keep in mind. Even when he has pretty dominant and pretty in control stuff, they don't like to really get him above a certain pitch count because of the injury history. He has gone over 6 on a couple of occasions, but keep an eye on that pitch count with DeGrom. This is not Bruce Bochy doesn't usually push him to like 100. Just kind of going through this. I've seen him get pulled early, and that's the one thing, when you handicap these things, you look at, managers and you try to study their tendencies. as best as you can. But it's hard. Like Paul Skeens yesterday, he got pulled with 78 pitches. And he had pretty damn good stuff in Seattle yesterday. And they pulled him at 78. And wouldn't you know, they brought in Mlodzinski, and he gave up a run there in the bottom of the sixth. They pulled him after 5 innings yesterday. And then Seattle, with the bullpen rested, Dan Wilson leaves George Kirby out to face a batter in the 7th, whereas he only had 85 pitches against Kansas City the other night with a bullpen that was that was taxed, and they didn't send him out there. So you get some really weird things with these outs. I'm just looking at DeGrom's pitch count. He has not gone over 90, but like 3 times, I think, all season. He's gone over 100 just once. So they usually like to keep DeGrom. If he's really efficient and he's at like 85 to 90 pitches, don't be surprised if he doesn't come out for the 7th. So that's what makes the outs kind of dangerous.
Yeah, and I think the Angels are going to swing and miss a lot. So I do think I wanted to go strikeouts and not outs, but I had him in outs in the last game. But I think that's the way to go. And it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I lost my dad a while ago, but when we were younger, we'd watch games, and he'd get so annoyed that they would take a pitcher out just because the guy was on a roll and things like that. You mentioned Skeens. Like with pitch counts and everything, it's just a different animal nowadays. You just don't know what managers are going to do. So it's just funny. Like if a guy's on a roll and they have a blueprint for like the 8th inning or 7th, 8th, 9 with the guys who hold before the closer, it's just sometimes mind-boggling. And I know Aaron Boone's caught a lot of reaction over the years and having a weird sort of decision tree of certain pitchers. But you always second guess, and I always say this about everything: life, sports. Everyone assumes the best outcome with the path that is not traveled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you leave the guy in there and he strikes out, it's like, should have pinch hit for him. It's like, well, you're assuming it would have worked. Like,
right.
You're assuming that he would have got a hit, right? Like he could have struck out as well. Like we don't have a placebo effect of decisions in life. We just don't have that luxury, unfortunately. So we touched on the main games, or at least what I would deem the main games. There's another national television game on MLB Network out west. San Diego hosting the Diamondbacks. Padres got some offense yesterday, but really the San Diego offense hasn't been as explosive as I expected. Darvish on the bump with Gallen and the Snakes in town. Gallen's a guy I typically look to fade, but he was coming off a really strong performance against the Giants. Got rocked the previous 2, really 3-4 outings. So for me, it's Padres or pass, but I'm never in a rush to back Darvish. How about yourself?
Yeah, this is a really tricky spot, I think, for the Diamondbacks. And I would lean Padres here, too, because they are in a really good spot. Home to home with no rest on that side to travel day, 33-15, and that's where the Padres are. So on the inverse, home to away is 15-33, and that's where the Diamondbacks are. But this is Yu Darvish coming back off the injured list here. So how long does Yu Darvish go tonight? I'm just looking to see. I don't think you have an outs prop or there's outs props for him. There are some strikeout props there at 3.5, juice the over, certainly at Bet Rivers. Nobody here, I think, really has very many outs props. I think.
Right, we should mention it's a season debut for Darvish. He got sidelined in spring training with an elbow issue, and he's had an elbow kind of injury history in the past. And he's 39 or going to be 39. So there's a little uncertainty here. I mean, if anything, I'm playing an under for a strikeouts prop. No, I mean, do we know if there's a pitch count?
I have not seen it as of yet, but
yeah,
I can't imagine he goes very deep. However, the bullpen, it was a bullpen game last night in San Diego, a rare Sunday night primetime doubleheader. Would like to see maybe 1 or 2 more of those, not every week, but, mix it up a little bit. So it was nice to see kind of a later night West Coast game last night with Texas and San Diego. Padres get the win. Suarez gets the save. They did use the bullpen a lot in that game, though, and also did so on Saturday where they lost 7-4 to the Rangers. But that's what makes it a little dicey for me. So if anything, if I'm playing anything, I'd play a total over here at 8.
Okay, so I guess I'm reading a beat writer. According to the manager of the Padres, Darvish expected to throw between 70 and 75 pitches.
So the goal is to get him through 5, obviously.
Five,
You know.
5, 6, if he's pitching great.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, some of these strikeout props are, I mean, over 3.5 now, not sounding so awful then.
It's not,
It's
and,
one an
and
inning almost.
yeah, because 75 pitches is about 15 an inning. So, the San Diego, I think, would be very happy to get him through 5 innings and get him at least a quality start in his debut on the season. But Arizona, despite the fact that the bats were very quiet yesterday, they can hit. They can make it tough on you, and they can put up big runs. Corbin Carroll did return to the lineup yesterday, as did Marte. Marte, I think, had a day off on Saturday. So a lot of unknowns in this game for me, Doug. I think I'm probably going to stay out of it. Want to see how Darvish looks. If you made me, I'd lay the juice with the strikeouts over. But I want to be a little bit cautious. Now, Woodruff came back yesterday. You mentioned him earlier and was dynamite. Sometimes that happens. It doesn't mean, okay, guy first start off the DL, that's an auto fade spot necessarily, but it's not an auto back spot either.
We ask everyone to get involved in the conversation on YouTube in the comments section. We have some comments I want to touch on. We were talking about that Rangers visiting the Angels game with DeGrom against Kikuchi. Wayne Newman saying Rangers 6-14 versus lefties. Kikuchi good at home. Angels plus money, home dog, and then a bicep emoji. Fred Springer saying Guardians are in the top 3 worst teams to back in the first 5. Bybee has been god awful. Houston's bats have seemed to be heating up after the Dodgers series, but don't want to lay a half run. So Astros first 5 money line is what Fred Springer is going to be going with. So I like the flushing it out. That's the beauty of some of these shows. I mean, I've gone into shows not sure if I was going to do, and then whether it's you or some of the other experts we have on the show, it's very helpful to kind of flush it out and get a second set of eyes on something and, just talk it out. And it's helpful. Wayne Newman is just going full game here. He's Astros money line -137, saying the Indians are 9-17 against left-handed pitching. But some of those numbers are just, slanted from the recency bias or recency numbers. Wes, you're a golf handicapper extraordinaire. We got course form versus recent form. Guardians have been terrible in recent form. What do you make of, the handicap? I know we touched on this game already, but how much do you put on just recent performance and how much they are in a downward spiral currently?
Yeah, Guardians have been missing the cut a lot, to use your golf analogy. They've got miscut. Usually, not somebody you want to back, at least on that form. But I don't know why the market's giving them love. That doesn't mean the market's always right, by the way, necessarily. So the market does like Cleveland. Everything else points to Houston. This probably is going to be a sit out for me. I understand why people are back in Houston because, look, you get these streaks sometimes. And sometimes a team gets on a roll and sometimes a team keeps losing. And, the last thing you necessarily want to do, even though I'm doing that with the White Sox today against Toronto, just because I like the spot, is get in front of streaks in baseball. Right. And then you lose one and then you're like, okay, well, this is the day. Because that's something that I've done over the years. And that's a mistake from a better. We talk about our triumphs. We got to talk about our failures too. Sometimes as bettors, we can be stubborn. And we fade streaks and we fade streaks and we fade streaks. And you can't do that all the time. That doesn't necessarily mean you hop on either, if you're late to the party, don't want to be early for the funeral, shall we say. So, yeah, I'm going to stay out of this. Market has adjusted, obviously, for Gordon being in instead of Hunter Brown, who is, going to be on the American League All-Star team and has been one of the better starters in the American League. And then maybe some people are thinking, okay, the streak's going to be over here. I'm not going to pay to find out.
And just a good food for thought, whether it's football, baseball, whatever, betting on a streak, you can bet on it. And even if you're late to the party, you can still only be wrong once, right? Let's say it's a 7-game win streak and you say, I'm going to tail. Well, let's say they happen to lose that next. All right. So you were wrong once. But if you try to bet into a streak, you can be wrong multiple times. So something to keep in mind. Now, on Friday, I did have the Mariners against the Pirates, who had won, I believe, 6 straight or something like that. I felt comfortable. The pitching matchup, the travel was terrible for Pittsburgh, and it worked out. So, the Pirates like win streak was a little fool's goal too. So I felt comfortable doing it, but the stars have to align, and they did for that game. One final game I want to discuss. This one also on MLB Network out west. Giants hosting the Phillies. Roop going for San Fran, and we've talked about him. He's got some nice breaking ball kind of strikeout pitch, but he's a little erratic, walks guys. And Christopher Sanchez goes for the fighting Phils, and they have the travel across country and all that good stuff. But Phillies road chalk here.
Yeah, and Giants have come back to earth a little bit after that really hot start. Still very solid, 7 over 500. But the Devers trade, I think they've been pretty like even. I don't think it's necessarily been okay. They gotten red hot. I don't think they've gotten necessarily cold, but always a difficult spot for the Phillies when you got to travel across country here. This is not one that really stood out to me here. Just looking at some of the pitcher props, which might be the way if I were to get involved at all, I would get involved here. Christopher Sanchez, 5.5 strikeouts to the over would be a lean for me against the Giants. They don't see him a lot. You don't get a lot of East versus West in Major League Baseball. So, and Sanchez 7-2 in 17 starts. So he's been a lot better and has gone deeper in games this year than he certainly did last year. So would lean over 5.5. I think it's 113 now at Bet Rivers on the VIG. They're certainly higher in the market. So if you like the over, you're getting a discount right now at Bet Rivers. So that'd probably be the way I would go here if I were to play this.
I would play Phillies if anything, but as of now, as we wrap up the show here, I've only done one play. That was that same game parlay with the Rangers and the under alt line of 9.5. So DeGrom over 6.5 Ks, under 9.5 for the game, plus 0.4. And you are on the White Sox, plus 148.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty light lifting for us.
Well, and I got one more prop here to give. I think it was the one game and the one game we hadn't gotten to was Pittsburgh and Kansas City. Now this is a risky one here, but because in light of how Pittsburgh hit,
aren't they all?
How Pittsburgh hit. Yeah, they are. They're all risky. Yeah, absolutely. Pittsburgh did not hit very well in Seattle. So you're kind of half playing them here when you're fading the opposing pitcher. But that's what I'm going to do here with Noah Cameron. Under 15.5 recorded outs. The workload's been reduced a little bit. He's only pitched into the 6th inning in just one of his last 4 starts. So this is not a guy that they are ready, this young left-hander, that they're ready to always go the 3rd time through the order. A lot of right-handed heavy lineup for Pittsburgh. O'Neal Cruz, by the way, has been moved down the lineup because they were having him in leadoff and he was hitting like 215 or something. So I think you got some regression for Cameron too. And when I talk about those regression stats you're looking at for pitchers, batting average, balls in play, remember I mentioned earlier, somewhere in the mid 290s is the market average. This time it's 206 for Noah Cameron. So that is astronomically low. And that tells you if it's not coming tonight, the regression monster to the negative is coming soon for this guy. He's 256 on the ERA and he's 433 on the xFIP. That's a 1 3/4 runs difference. Kansas City, by the way, should have everybody in the bullpen available. Did not have a heavy workload yesterday with Michael Lorenzen going very deep into the game against Arizona. 2 best starters lined up the next 2 games and then an off day on Thursday. So unless Cameron is like really dominant, man, I know he's got this scoreless streak, but I don't think they want to see him even against a weak Pirates lineup. They might not chance it 3rd time through the lineup, so he's going to be facing, 18 to 19 hitters or something like that. So Noah Cameron under 15.5 outs.
Okay, I like it. Good to get involved. Another play for the people. As we've been on a roll. I had 5 plays on Friday. Sometimes the card just lends itself to you. Chris Massaro had a really good Thursday. He was on with the Bull, went 3-0. So things work out some way. Sometimes they don't. And it was a lighter card, so we had fewer games on the menu from which to choose. So that's something to keep in mind. But The key is to keep winning and grinding out W's, which we will look to continue to do, as well as tonight. We have a rare slate in the W on a Monday, usually a dark day in the WNBA. We have 2 games tonight, so we'll break that down. Albert Nguyen's going to be joining me top of the hour. Again, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, Betting Weekly Fast Break. That's also a new show, right along with Betting Weekly Hardball, the one you were watching, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, also on the Bet Rivers Network. All right, Wes, that's going to do it for us. Always appreciate your insight. You're talking some baseball later in the week, so stay tuned. Please like and subscribe the podcast. It helps us, but also helps you get alerts on when shows are coming up, and we are always archived here under the Betting Weekly umbrella. So for Wes Reynolds and everyone behind the scenes who makes it all look oh so good, I'm Doug Kezirian, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.